There's some seats up the front if anyone. Oh, those ones are panel seats. There's a few. I thought we got more chairs. Yeah, you can all get there. Almost there. I'm going to get started. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, a little bit about what's happening tonight. So, I'm going to go through a few minutes of housekeeping, most of the boring stuff. There'll be a quick section if anyone's looking for work or if anyone's looking to hire. We'll get into our first talk, have a short break, and following that we'll have a panel discussion, which is what all these seats are for. So, really looking forward to the schedule tonight. So our first talk is from Nicole about her experience in the 100 Days of Swift UI course, which should be very exciting. And then our second talk is the panel on Vision Pro, also very exciting. So our next event will be the 18th of April here at Billu again. We are looking for talks. So I say this every month. It's kind of critical that we get talks in order to be able to run these events. So please, if you're interested in giving a talk, if you have a topic you think might be interested, feel free to get in touch with me. Slack's probably the best way. You can also do it on Meetup. Get in touch with Christian if you like, and we'll be able to help you workshop any ideas if you like. So yeah, please, once again, if you have something interesting to say, we'd love to have you present at a future CocoaHeads. So I'm Zach and Christian is at the back there. Together we run CocoaHeads. So a big welcome and a big thank you to our sponsor tonight. So Billu is sponsoring the event. For those who don't know, well, we're in their offices. You probably know that, but they also help with our catering costs as well as our ongoing costs, things like Meetup, website hosting, that kind of stuff. So without them, we couldn't do these events, and we really appreciate it. Again, a reminder that we have a code of conduct. The idea is we want everyone to feel welcome at CocoaHeads. The code of conduct boils down to a few key points. They are to be respectful, to be inclusive, and be aware. You can read it in full on the website, but if there's any issues or questions related to this, again, feel free to get in touch with Christian or myself, and we'll address that promptly. We have a Slack community. Actually, this QR code might be out of date. I'll put a better one up later. But it's a good place. It's a good thing to join. A good place to hang out during the month. A few channels that might be of interest: general, jobs, Swift, and Sydney. Especially that jobs channel. So now, since we've combined with a few other CocoaHeads groups, and also I think some New Zealand people as well, that jobs channel is a little bit more active than when it was just Sydney. So it can be a good place to hang out if you're looking for work, or if you're looking to find someone to work, because there's I think over 1,000 iOS developers in that Slack group. So it's a pretty big community. Again, sorry, if that link doesn't work, I'll put up another one after. Is anyone attending for the first time tonight? Hand up. Big welcome, round of applause. Great having you with us. We hope you enjoy, and we hope you come back. If you like what you see here tonight, a reminder that Melbourne CocoaHeads also does a similar thing. They run on the second Thursday of the month, so we run on the third. And they also usually have an excellent live stream. So if you'd like to tune in and watch that, you can do that from pretty much anywhere. And they have a similar format where it's usually a talk or two about Swift and iOS development. Okay, so now's the opportunity. If you're looking for work or if you're hiring, you can get up, 20 seconds feel, and hopefully connect you with someone on the other end of that.
So I'm Kamal from Domain, and we're currently, actually not currently, but the next couple of weeks we'll have a team lead role open, preferably for someone with mobile experience. And we'll also have it's probably not the right audience either, but we've also got a senior Android developer role pretty good as well.
Cool. Do you reckon you can post that in Slack when it's job?
Absolutely, we'll drop it in Slack, but if you want to get ahead of it, just wait.
Cool. Anyone else? Hiring, looking for work? All right, cool. I'll move on. Conferences. There's a it's conference season. There's a few coming up. I've got them in the right order this month. So Deep Dish Swift is happening early next month in Chicago. It's all about Swift and iOS development. I checked on the train here. Tickets are still available. However, it does conflict with DevWorld, which is happening in Melbourne, basically the later end of that same week as Deep Dish, so I don't think it'd be possible to go to both. But DevWorld is also a good conference worth checking out, very close to home, and it's running over 3 days. And we don't know much other than that. I don't think tickets are available yet, but if you want to submit a talk, you can still do that. I think there's another day or two, I don't know exactly. But otherwise, keep an eye on the DevWorld website for when tickets eventually go on sale. It's a very good conference to attend. I highly recommend it. We're also expecting an announcement for WWDC imminently, probably between now and the next meetup. So if that happens, I'll have more information about that then. But I guess stay tuned. It'll probably be in June, usually is. Okay. I seem to have duplicated my slides, but now anyway, that's all I have for you tonight. So we're going to get straight into Nicole's talk, 100 Days of Swift UI. So everyone, big round of applause for Nicole. Okay.
Wait.
7427. Over to you.
Alright. Hello everybody. Thanks Zach for giving me this opportunity and for trusting me to do this. It makes a real difference. So hello everyone, my name is Nicole and it's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight and present to you. And the topic of my presentation today is, as Zach said, 100 Days of Swift UI Learning Stories. And just to be clear, the 100 Days of Swift UI refers to Paul Hudson's beginner Swift UI programming course on his website, Hacking with Swift. And as the title suggests, it means that I'm new, both to Swift programming and also to this community. And I love meeting new people, so I think it would be great if we have a show of hands and get to know each other a little bit. And to start off with, I would love to have a show of hands. Who here has an active programming experience for under 1 year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say yeah.
Okay, great. As a beginner, okay, I acknowledge you.
I've got commit history on GitHub. That's my idea.
Great. Okay, so what about more than 1 year and up to 5 years?
Does uni count?
Yes. If you programmed actively, yes. Who would be between the 1 and the 5?
It's commercial experience or
Any programming, not just Swift.
I'm doing some.
On 5. Great. Wow. Okay, so more than 5 years. I assume that's everybody else. Oh my God. I'm thoroughly intimidated right now. Okay.
more than 20.
Thoroughly intimidated. Okay. Now, when I first show up to the meetup last year, okay, and it was around September when I started the 100 days, Zach spoke to me about, potentially sharing my learning experience. And the first thought, obviously, is, really? Like, what could I possibly share, right, on topic where I am a complete beginner with a bunch of people that, like, 100 times the experts than me. And what I remind myself is that I love learning and I love people and stories. And I think for anyone that shows up here today, okay, who has made the effort to be here today, I would guess that I'm amongst kindred spirits, that you all love learning and you all value connecting with people. So I thought maybe I need not scare myself into a hideout. And so here we are today. And so a little bit about myself. Who am I? So as I mentioned, I love learning and I love story. And I also love making things. And I guess I've always loved technology products as well. And I had a background in maths, specifically actuarial studies, and I had worked professionally in investments and finance. And after some time, I decided to make a change, and also because life changes. So I took a break and I did a whole bunch of things. I learned a whole bunch of things. I went off and taught yoga for a little bit, and I traveled. And I also embraced a new hobby that is dancing, which I love. It's a amazing learning experience, actually. Then I also did a whole bunch of personal development programs that gave me invaluable life skills. I think a few years back, for me to stand here in front of you and speak would be impossible. But I'm really glad that today I'm able to experience a degree of calmness and be able to create and share something fun with all of you. So what am I doing today? Well, I am teaching myself technology skills because I intend to make technology products. And that brings me to 100 Days of Swift UI. Now, I guess, I would love to share with you where I've been with this program. Okay, because the first day of the 100 days was August the 9th, 2023. And that is 226 days ago. So it's a little bit more than, well, it's 2 times more than the 100 days. And I would say that during the period of the 226 days, okay, on day 60, to my surprise, but probably to none of your surprise, which is that the program changed from being designed for iOS 15 to iOS 17. So when I first realized, I was like, oh, do I have to start all over again? So in fact, I did do the program 2 times, okay, but it's like 2 times in a kind of rough kind of way. I'll show you how it is. So I think it's important that I share this with you because it really is the background of the topic today, which is learning stories. And the intention I have with the learning stories is also that I would love that we all walk away, with a new sense of how we all learn better. Whether this could be you picking up a new hobby, or that you're empowering a new programmer in your team, or that you're, having new ideas about how to empower yourself or other people to explore new career options, which requires learning. So, so with that, I will, okay, the other thing is, since I love making things, when I first thought about giving a presentation, I absolutely could not resist the idea of making an app to do the presentation. Now, I'm not sure but look, like there were definitely times where I thought I bit off more than I can chew, but in the end, I'm really glad that I'm here, being able to show you and share with you something fun, and something I think is beautiful. But let's fingers crossed that it works. Okay, so here's the app. Now, can I just have a quick show of hands who here knows about Paul Hudson? Okay, amazing. Okay, who has done his 100-day either Swift or Swift UI?
I can speak.
Yeah.
Okay, great, amazing. Right, now for those of you who haven't, and a reminder for those of you who have, I want to just have a quick overview of what the 100 days cover. So out of the 100 days, the first 15 days is on 10 topics of fundamentals, Hey, it works. Simple types, complex types, operators, flow controls, functions, closures, structs, classes, protocols, optional. Great. Then there are 18 days that are on 6 topics of techniques. And for the iOS 15 program, starts with views, animation, drawing, core data, accessibility, and layout. Then for the iOS 17, Paul replaced drawing with navigation and replaced core data with Swift data. Right, then there are 56 days. Paul covered 13 app demo projects. Right, so I was able to follow along and 13 apps. Amazing. Then there are 7 app challenges. Okay, so I'll be honest with you. Look, to be honest, I'm a little bit terrified about sharing, the guts of what I do. But in the interest of sharing learning, I would just be honest here. Out of the 7, I did 2. Right. Then out of the 100 days, there's also one day where Paul shared 2 presentations that is industry related. And that's amazing. And the one at the bottom in particular, I believe everyone knows who that is. And I love that. Okay, if you haven't watched it, day 48, highly recommend it. Steve Wozniak. And then, oh my God, have not done the final exam. And the final exam is 100 questions, and you need to get it 70 correct. I'll go into a little bit about what goes on there. Now, there's also his Unwrap practice app. So I did do the practice app. Okay, I did 25 badges. I completed all 25 badges. Okay, so it was fun. Then, so what happened with my learning journey is that I did the 100 days with the Swift UI iOS 15. And out of the 100 days, I did 92. I intend to complete it, okay, and I'll be happy to come back and be accountable for it. Then the iOS 17, which happened on October 7th, 2023, and I think Paul just finished updating it on something like 21st of February this year. Okay, out of the new 100 days, I did also 99. Okay, oops. Right. Then what I also went on and did was I did the I looked at the Stanford CS 193P course, which is free. And what look, I had looked at this course before, but it was way beyond me when I first looked at it. Then now that I looked at it, one of the things I loved about this course was one of its app projects, which is the Memorize game. And right, and the Memorize game. And why do I just keep doing that? Sorry, I've got this other phone here that's keep making a noise. I apologize. So what I did, right? Spoiler alert a little bit here. Okay, I've gone to it because one of the projects, the Memorize app or game app, inspired me to make the app that I'm presenting to you tonight. So I went through 5 out of the 15 lectures, okay, to try to copy some of the features across. But as you see, the copying was not as straightforward. And then, so out of the 226 days, I love that I've ended up with this app that I'm sharing with you tonight. Okay, it's for my use only, it's not for anybody else. But nonetheless, it's an app of my own invention. And I've connected with the community on five occasions. So CocoaHeads September, October, December. I went online to the iOS Dev Happy Hour December meetup, and it's fantastic. It's one that Paul recommends, but it's some ungodly hour, which is like 4 a.m. or something like that. So I turned up once and then I did not do that again. I hope to do that again because it was very valuable actually. then, March. Okay, so now let's get on to the actual app of my learning stories. So as you can see, there are 9 cards here, okay? 8 stories. The last one is a bit of a mystery card, and we'll get to it. And yes, behind each one of these cards, there's a learning story. And I very much intend that we walk away from here learning a lot from each other, that these stories provide a context in which we can talk about how humans learn. And it's actually one of the greatest secret agendas of mine to be here tonight, to say yes to Zach. And that is actually to pick your brains and learn from you. So let's begin. Now, where I would love to begin with learning stories is at the top, okay? So let's have a look. It does. Okay. So I've added this little animation here, okay? And what you're looking at is actually a workaround to fix up the fact that I do not know how to make the navbar title multi-line. So if you know how to do that with a simple modifier, I love for you to come up and tell us. Hey?
It's not possible.
It's not possible. Okay.
Good workaround.
Great. Okay. And the second reason I did that little animation is because I think it's relevant and important today that we talk about how humans learn. And, of course, I'm fascinated by that myself. And so much of what we talk about when we talk about learning these days, I find is talking about machines being the ones doing the learning. And, but I'm like, what about us? And I personally believe that how humans learn and how machines learn would always be different. Okay, and I would love to hear what you think. But that's to do with the title. And now that we're done with the title, let's get on with the stories. Okay. Okay. Now, the first story I will begin with is at 0. Okay, and of course, because now that I start programming and speaking to programmers, I know better than to start counting than to count from 1, right? So we start at 0. Now, the thing is, I also think, from a learning perspective, 0 to 1 is actually, I personally think, where the real learning happens. When I talk about 0 to 1, I think most people will think about a book, okay, a very famous book. And I'm not talking about that. I actually think about it in terms of this feeling that I have. And when I was preparing for this presentation, I set myself down and I asked myself, how would I summarize my experience of learning in the last however many days when I was doing this? And the thing that came to mind is a quote, and I will share that with you. Well, actually, there's first of all, there's a little emoji, and the emoji is meant to represent what the story is about. Okay, and if you think, well, actually, would anyone care to share what they think the story is about?
Tough story. Tough experience.
Tough experience? Yeah. Anyone else?
Feeling lost.
Huh?
Feeling lost.
Feeling lost? Good.
Fear.
Yes.
Ah.
That's the closest. Okay, like the thing is, right, that the what this is about is represented by a few of the pictures that I've got here. This person here said that, okay, so this is a documentary in the year 1996, BBC Horizon, for Maslow's theorem. And he said, perhaps I could best describe my experience in terms of entering a dark mansion. This could be a little bit obscure, but would anyone care to guess who this person is?
Is it Andrew, what's his name, who actually solved Fermat's last theorem?
Yes, Andrew
This-
Wiles.
Yeah.
Andrew Wiles. So this is a British mathematician, and in 1994, he solved the longest unsolved mathematical problem in history, apparently, for I think it was 358 years unsolved. And it was left by Pierre de Fermat, and it's about the x to the power of n plus y power of n equals z power of n, right? So, and he solved that problem, and he, at the beginning of the documentary, said that, and he spent 7 years. Apparently, he was fascinated by that problem when he was 10 years old, and then in his adult professional career as a mathematician, he spent 7 years completely dedicated to solving this problem. And he described the experience, and I do think, when I think about learning, his quote is amazing. He says, "Perhaps I could best describe my experience of doing mathematics in terms of entering a dark mansion. One goes into the first room, it's dark, really dark. One stumbles around, bumping into furniture. Gradually, you learn where each piece of furniture is. Finally, after some time, you find the light switch. You turn it on, and suddenly, it's all illuminated. You can see exactly where you were." And at this moment, he was extremely emotional because, you know, that light switch moment, he said he probably would never experience for the rest of his life. But anyway. Okay, so what fascinates me about this description of the experience is the notion of darkness. And it is repeated in another account of a learning and creative experience that is completely unrelated to mathematics. And as I said, I love learning, so I subscribe to masterclass with a group of friends. And this is Margaret Atwood, and she's the author of a very popular book and also made into a TV series called The Handmaid's Tale. And she also wrote a book on about writing. And the name of the book is On Writers and Writing. And what she did there was she went and researched a whole bunch of authors and asked them to give her the experience of what it's like to be learning and creating with writing. And she said that at the end of all her research, all the answers had to do with going into something that was dark. So Virginia Woolf, for example, she found it's like going into a dark room and holding up a lamp which illuminates the things that were already there. And everybody goes into going into something that was dark, you couldn't see, you didn't know what was there, and then bringing some form of illumination. And I find that really summarizes how I feel about learning new things, and especially with SwiftUI. So what does darkness look like for me? Okay, I think everybody must be very familiar with this. And closures. Now, what I love about this moment, right, was that Paul Hudson said, okay, in my moment of darkness, I'm going to warn you, this is likely to hurt your brain. It is not because you aren't smart enough or you're not cut out for this Swift programming. If you're finding it hard, it's a good sign things are working normally. I just feel like I instantly became his biggest fan. Okay, I think there's incredible amount of humanity here, and I'm so grateful to him for saying that. So you can imagine, like, you know, really feeling in the dark that's day 9, but actually for the rest of whatever 92 days I went through, it felt very much like that. So I really appreciate him pointing that out. And so for the story of darkness, what I feel about that as a human learner is that generosity makes a difference. Whether it's to, how we, empower each other as well as empower ourselves. So this is the first story. So a second story at index position number 1. What is this story about? Okay, let me flip it over. Okay, this is a story of light. Okay. Let me think about what's behind this card. Okay. So there's a stack of pictures behind this story. The story of light. So what does story of light looks like? What does story of light look like? It looks like a new perspective. Now, there's a quote here that Paul says, "Programming is an art. Don't spend all your time sharpening your pencil when you should be drawing." I would not say that 226 days ago I imagined sitting here today with a bunch of artists. I wouldn't say that. But today, yeah, I wouldn't be too, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And what I would like to say is that I saw some parallel between, the moment I saw the parallel is when Paul says the only way to write great code is to write a lot of back code first. And what that reminds me of is my dance teacher, Tessa. And she's a great dance teacher. And at the beginning of our dance journey, she tries to give us some inspiration. And she gave us this website called The Modern Met, okay? And effectively it's a website that shows drawings that is before and after. Before and after practice, obviously. And as you can see here, there's an artist who drew Taylor Swift in 2009, and she drew Taylor Swift again in 2015. Okay, so that's some of how she wants to inspire us, and I think what Paul is trying to say here is probably similar. What I would also say is that the second biggest, what does light look like for me also is one of the, is this sort of big learning moment that I had. And this big learning moment I had is in the process of me creating this very app we're looking at. So what is happening here? Okay, so on the left-hand side, okay, there's a big pane of code that's folded up. And what it is it's 1,033 lines of code of me trying to figure out how to make this card flip with an animation. Now, as I was saying that copying that little feature of animation from that Stanford course across, I thought it was very straightforward, but it turned out not to be. And I want to give you a quick little demonstration here. Okay, now I was able to pretty well set this up with only struts. Only struts. Okay, you can see where I'm going. This actually works not bad. Okay, so my intention is to have a stack of cards that represent my stories, have them flip around, go to a nav link, and have it show a stack of cards, and me attach pictures to it and tell a story. Okay, so I got to this point, and I was very happy with myself. Okay, it happens to a detail screen. Okay, so I thought that's fantastic. I was very happy. And I go, how hard could it be that I just wanted to show a flip animation? So I went to the Stanford website. Okay, I looked at its code and I tried to copy across. Then what happened was this. Okay, after 1033, at line 481, I made this little comment. Fails to show flip animation, bull passed down doesn't work. And that's when I realized, oh, you gotta use the class. Okay, then, the funny thing is, and this is where I'm gonna feel incredibly stupid. It took me 7 hours to get to this point, and then it took me another 7 hours to fix it. If you were to judge me, I can understand. Okay, and I welcome you to share with me anything you want to say to me. However, the point of this here is that I realized I made a mistake in not completing those 5 challenges projects. And I realized that it is only when I took the courage to create something of my own that I truly learn. And with this, I actually learned something else that is the biggest discovery of the whole course. And on day 53, this is where we start talking about data. This quote here, Canadian software developer Rob Pike, creator of the Go programming language, said this about data. Data dominates. If you've chosen the right data structures and organized things well, the algorithms will almost always be self-evident. Data structures, not algorithms, are central to programming. I would say that before the program, I have no idea of that perspective. And now that I know, I think, it really makes me think about how to make technology products differently. And this brings me to the next little slide. Okay, so I'm big on holistic well-being. And so I followed the app Calm. Okay, and this happens to come up in my feed. Okay, don't judge me. It's a sleep story called Wonder, read by Matthew McConaughey. And the interesting thing about this sleep story is it also mentions darkness. It says, this story is about how many times we fear the dark only to find, once we enter it, there's nothing to fear on the other side. There is something to be in awe of, something quite magical. So I would say that the stuff that I discovered was totally, I'm in awe of, and I find it magical. And it really took that I, just take up the challenge of doing something of my own. And so this is the second story of light, which is that the courage is the thing that brings light. Okay, now up to the third story. Okay, so what's this about? There's a heart here. I guess this is a very quick follow-up story to what we just looked at. Now, what my dance teacher would love to say is, and what I love about her, is that she always talks about how important it is to learn how to learn. So there's a slide here of her swing literacy program. So the dance that I do is swing, West Coast swing. I would love for all of you to come, by the way. Okay, we practice every Tuesday in Ashfield RSL. It's a very fun dance, so please come join us. Anyway, so my dance teacher, Tessa Cunningham, she has a website, Swing Literacy. And what I love here is that she has the learning process. It is better to know how to learn than to not. Even though the quote is from Dr. Seuss, I think it's still valid. So it's about learning how to learn. And what I find interesting is that notwithstanding that, I've gone through a career, and learned different things, I still feel that when I go into a new area of learning, it's like, it has that darkness feeling. and that you fear that dark somehow. So I think the process of learning is about keep learning and how to keep doing that. And what I didn't say at the end of that quote about the sleep story is that it did not end there. It went on to say that that sense of awe and magic we knew really well as children. However, we lose touch with that sense of wonder as we grow older. And we somehow grow up to learn worse. So it's interesting to have, for me, to reflect on why that is. Because sometimes I feel, whenever I try something new, like I'm stopped. I can be stopped. And what Tesla would say to me is, well, Nicole, your brain is sabotaging your dance. And I would substitute here dance with learning or growth. And what she quotes here is a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And as you can see, there's a little hill here. Okay, and the key parts here is Child's Hill, Insecure Canyon, and Grown-Up Mountain. So I find that as children, maybe we just didn't care as much as, this bit here. So we're always, having a lot of fun up here. But as we grow older, we kind of get sort of like unaware, like we unaware a lot of times sit in this insecure canyon. And so the process to keep learning and keep trying new things is the process of a healthy relationship with fear ongoingly, right? So, and that's kind of, I think what this is talking about is the awareness for, it's not the code that is unbelievably hard or whatever it is that you're learning. It's more like, oh, this is how I work as a human being. So I just got to deal with me rather than to deal with the code, in a sense. Okay. Now, so the story really is story of love and fear. Okay, and fear to me, probably in hindsight, when I reflect on this 226 days, it's disguised as curiosity. I would skip the challenges. And what I say to myself is, look, I just want to see what it's like at the end. Okay, and I was probably impatient as well, so I kind of just want to get through it all and see what's there. But really, I find that, maturity and self-love help us rise above fear and keep learning. And that is, if I find it difficult, I just need to have the awareness that this is how I work as a human being. Like I said, rather than to think it's all too hard. Actually, I apologize. Let me go back. Okay, so at this point here, I have a question mark. And what I'm extremely curious about is, will it ever be completely, one day, you feel like, oh, I bathe in light forever? Okay, so I would love people who here have done, I don't know, more than 5 years, 10, whatever years. Like, would anyone be happy to share with me whether you ever feel like, oh my God, no more darkness?
I'm not there yet.
That means you're not taking on challenges or keeping up to date.
Right.
And that means you're going to get bored because you're not learning anymore.
Because I think as a beginner, naively, I just feel like, oh, wouldn't it be good if one day, it would just all be clear. Everything is clear. It'll just always be clear, right? But good. So my challenges was not mine alone. Okay, so the fourth story, okay, is this little rocket here, okay, and what this story is about. So it looks like a little rocket launch, okay, successfully.
Is it Elon Musk's?
No, I would think about that next time. But here, okay, what this story is about is how much, I guess, I desire to launch successfully into being able to create my own technology, outcomes, products, but how much it had been a difficult journey and not turned out like that. And I feel maybe it's in some way can be related to people, doing different kinds of, pursuing different types of endeavors. And now if you can see how many pictures that there are, and if you think this story is one that I feel strongly about, you'd be all right. Day 0. What Paul Hudson said, I've designed this program aimed squarely at 2 kinds of people. One is the absolute beginner, and the second is the false beginner. I immediately that's me. So I love that he said that because I feel like I found somebody who understands me. So what does a false beginner look like? Right, let me see. I want to make sure I'm giving you all the background. Right, actually, that's right. What Paul said here is that he defined the false beginner as somebody who failed to secure the beginner level or entry level software engineer job. Now, I would define the false beginner for myself here as the person who tried to learn and tried to walk away with the ability to make a product, but was unable to. So I was a false beginner in that sense. And what does the absolute beginner look like for me when I started, right? So the start of my programming career actually was, I know that was playing a game, but it actually started with myself as a very lucky beginner. And this is a true hero of my life. So my dad taught me programming when I was about 10. Okay, and without giving away my age, I programmed at the very beginning in DOS with BASIC. I'm not here to show you how many people here understands DOS and BASIC. But I remember, well, this is, I think, a IBM PC, probably Intel, I don't know, A60, A0 or something, which most people probably nowadays wouldn't recognize. But I remember my dad, hey, somebody said something? Right, so I remember my dad, one of the first projects my dad gave me to do was to make a program that trains me to times table. Okay, and I was able to do that. However, I never really followed up with a formal education and training in programming. But I think what is important here is that why I say I was lucky as an absolute beginner is that ever since then, I never had a problem with looking at the command line interface, which apparently a lot of people have trouble if they're not from doing programming. So I consider myself really lucky there. However, what happened after that was that I decided, like I said, I had a career in finance, investments. I was kind of good with numbers. At some point, I realized I wasn't really happy. And I thought I want to consider alternative career options. And what I did was I went back to the fact that I love making things and I love technology products. And I saw this little diagram. And I thought, oh, isn't that great? Product management and product managers at the intersection of customers, technology, and business. I thought, wow, that sounds like me. I would love to do that. Okay, I want to give that a go. And then I read some books and I realized it's important to understand technology I thought, oh yeah, I'll just give technology a go. I'll pick up some languages and see what I can understand. So now it brings me to my first foray. It says here, sorry, it's very small. November 29th, 2017. I attempt learning React Native because it's the cross-platform language. I completed this course. Look, Stephen Grider. He's great. It's a great course, right? So it was following along. I coded along. I came away with some apps. The main thing I remember from that experience was that within about 1 month, nothing worked. Okay, just like, and then I could not possibly know how to fix that. Right. So I was like, oh, what do I do now? However, choosing the React Native language is, at first, it seems totally makes sense. It goes on Android and it goes on Apple, and apparently everybody recommends it. Except that I could not find a way forward. So this is at the end of 2017. Then what happens? June 20th, 2018. So that's 6 months later. There's this article. Sunsetting React Native on Medium. Does anyone, I wonder if people have read this, familiar with this article. Yeah, everybody's familiar with this article. And it is Airbnb, Gabriel Keel, writing about the decision at Airbnb. And the headline, really, if you read the first page, failing to reach our goals. And their goals were speed, quality, code once, developer experience. And the fascinating thing, write code once instead of twice. As a result, we wound up supporting code on 3 platforms instead of 2. I was like, wow, I am not going to continue with React Native anymore. So I looked into iOS development. This was February 21st, 2020. Welcome to the world's best iOS development course on Udemy, once again, by Dr. Angela Yu. And I must say that I actually loved her course. I think her style of communication is amazing. She used a lot of animation and analogies to teach her projects, which were amazing to follow. But what is interesting was that I think this was on iOS 13, okay, and it was Swift 5. And as you can see here, import UI kit class, visual controller. And I did complete the course 100%. And Swift UI came out in 2019. This was 2018. So what happened once again was once I finished the thing, I could not use it, right? It was not updated, okay, as I checked today. This was still the language she was doing. Could I have continued with Swift? Probably, but I just feel like when I open up Xcode, this is not what I see anymore. So I don't know what to do. So that's 2020. So false beginner, okay. Then what happened? 2023. July, I can't remember, 13, something like that. iOS 17, another course, Kenneth Jones, 100% complete. Another code along course. I wanted something up to date, and I just thought, look, I really want to give this another go. I followed along. Once again, it's a follow along, code along course. And then lesson 105 of 107, he said, this persistence feature, it's very difficult to solve, but thank God for Paul Hudson, who gave out this solution. I'll just go with Paul Hudson. And finally, I found Paul Hudson. Okay, I flipped over a bit too quickly. But what I want to show here is what I find different with Paul Hudson is this thing here. How to use opaque return types. Now, what is different about Paul's course and the rest of the course is that Paul spent 15 days teaching fundamentals on those 10 topics. And on the topic of protocols, he covered opaque return types. I mean, look, it did take me a couple of goes to understand what the heck it was. So I'm glad that I understand what it is now. But it's true. The first screen you see on the boilerplate, it's an opaque return type, submute. And I would say that nobody of those previous courses really explained that. And what I discovered reminds me of something that my dance teacher keeps telling me, is that when we develop, it's the notion of skill progression ladder. That there's a difference between simple skills and complex skills. And when we consider complex skills, it's a matter of layering up and that there's a ladder. And you can't skip stages. So she gave some pictures here, which is self-explanatory, depending if you're, familiar with female activities. Male activities. But the picture on the left here, okay, so it's aerial aerobatic maneuvers. Okay, and it says, before you try to be this guy, before you attempt this move, try to learn this move first. So that one, the red one, is obviously doing the circles, and then the blue ones is doing the straight lines. Right? So there is an order, and the sequence matter. And that the picture on the right, well, if you're familiar with applying makeup, which I do probably one other person in the audience does, or maybe somebody else in the audience, you will understand that if you don't apply things in sequence, the result is not pretty. So what I realized is that most of the adult learning, which is learning by unaided discovery, the greatest challenge is the sequencing, which is to know what comes first and what comes later. And I think the greatest difference that Paul made for me was to give the right sequence. So the story of the false beginner. So there's a false, and there must be a true. All right. So I think to learn true, which to me is with the ability to keep creating and get on top of change, a thoughtful curation of content and a committed teacher matter. What I'm extremely curious about is that it has taken all that time for me to come to Paul, which finally made a difference. And that you're looking at the first app I ever made. So it's a massive breakthrough. It gives me incredible joy to be able to share this with you. What I'm extremely curious about is, I feel like I struggle, and Paul says struggle is good, but I feel like I struggle unnecessarily. I don't know, I feel like I did something wrong here. I wonder, how did you guys ever come to the right teachers for yourselves? I would love to open to the audience and ask for some feedback, comments.
Pretty similar to you, just trying a course and didn't work until I found something that I could stick with.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have a teacher beyond that now. Now I'm looking for the next one.
Yeah. What about, yes?
I found that books work way better for me than courses.
Right.
Just because the approach was similar, that in a book you have enough space to cover the fundamentals and you don't have the need to deliver immediately on apps and features and whatever with those code-alongs, right? Because they start an app and you need to feel like you are progressing. While in a book, these are the fundamentals, and then you can build up on them.
Wow, amazing. Yes, please.
Yeah, some of the stuff I want to learn now, it's quite hard to find a teacher, so like self-taught stuff is like really important. But one of the best teachers I had was, it's kind of like the difference between kind and nice, right? So he was kind because he was always willing to be mean sometimes, if that makes sense. So I remember like I'd write code and he would come over and tell me it was rubbish, and then he'd delete it and he'd close my browser, so my editor, so I couldn't control Z. And then he'd probably back up again. And there was this, but he did it in a nice way, right? And he explained.
Bastard.
Yeah. But that's like, so someone who's kind and willing to sort of actually make you explain things, and also not just say, oh, that's okay, keep going, but actually to say that's kind of not very good. Try again.
Yeah, I see. So sort of like a teacher that is honest with the feedback. Yeah, and kind of set a high standard for you.
I'm willing to take mean measures when they're necessary.
But does he give you a hint as to what was not nice about?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he does. That's great.
And then he'd sit with me for half an hour and
Oh, that's
write it
nice.
himself. And
Yeah. Amazing. What's your name?
come out.
Kamal. Great. And what's your name?
Balázs.
Balaj. Great. And what's your name?
Giuseppe.
Giuseppe. Really great. Thank you. And anybody else?
You reminded me of downloading, I think, when iOS 2 came out and they first launched the SDK. I was really excited. I downloaded everything and I opened it up and I had no idea what to do then. And I think also Apple at some point had I think it's called Track Mix. It was like a tutorial and you built a view and a slider and everything, and they had like a really basic thing that you could get an app working. And then kind of the next thing was like
It all broke.
a massive step up, right? Like they had this is how you get a view working, now you're on your own. And that took me ages to kind of get over that, to find something else, but yeah.
But you could download the 1,000+ pages of documentation as a single set.
Yeah.
Really handy. And that grew to about 2,000 more. They said it's all online now. You can't actually download it. So.
Oh my gosh.
But one of the things they do have that makes it quite difficult, like anyone who's looked at new stuff coming out in WWDC, is they post lots of little demos and samples and whatever, and within a week or two as beta 1 or beta 2 comes out, all the stuff that's been published is broken. So all the references are wrong, literally all the exam, they never fix them. So that's very frustrating, is literally it all goes out of date within 2 weeks. So yeah, that's an interesting challenge.
Look, I'm really glad that the challenge I went through wasn't unique to me. Zach?
I would say a little bit similar to Kamal's experience, but not the kind of savage teacher, but just sort of being like a really supportive work environment, which my first job really was, and sort of having the developers around, like kind of politely nudge, when something wasn't quite up to standard or whatever, and then sort of being able to actually like go, okay, well, what should it look like, and then having them like take the time to walk through it. And then the other part to that is just reading their code and sort of like there were things I learned by doing that I couldn't really possibly have learned online, I don't think, like through a course or something like that. And because I never found a course that stuck, like I could always kind of piece things together, but then getting a job and sort of like having access to a few code bases was really where it all clicked, and like things came together that I kind of knew in the abstract. But then sort of seeing a massive code base and how things interact with each other, and how like even the developers sort of contributed to that code base, like that kind of, just made something click and brought it all together. So it's kind of like what Kamal said about having someone who's willing to walk you through it, but also just exposure to that. It takes time. Yeah.
Or even point you to a chunk of the code base that you don't know about that will give you a clue of, right, I can go and read up how that works now and apply something similar.
I was going to ask whether you just read the code base yourself, or do people kind of try to show you where things are and how it works?
It was more like if I needed to do something in the code base, the first step would be understanding what the thing that I'm trying to change does, and part of that is reading. Like I find it's easier to read it sort of with the idea that you need to fix something about it or you need to change something, as opposed to just like picking a random file and going, okay, what happens here? And then eventually, like you do that enough times and you've worked in enough parts of the code base, that you kind of are able to start piecing it all together. And then again, like, you just do that day in, day out for months, years, and you do learn stuff eventually.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Plus write unit tests before you break things. You know whether you just broke it or you fixed it.
I see. And what's your name?
Neil.
Neil. And yours?
Tom.
Tom. And
I was going to add one more because I started learning SwiftUI when it was very new, and you do courses and stuff, and you learn like lots of pieces, and maybe you learn how to make a small app. But then I really wanted to learn how to make like a big app. How do you actually put all this together? How should you architect it? And something that helped me was occasionally coming across repos where people had like published big example apps and seeing how they architected it, because especially with SwiftUI, it was so new. There was not a lot out there. Going to that next level of like developing something big.
yeah, looking at examples. Great. All right, let's look. There's a couple of rapid fire. Okay. What's number 4? Sorry. Yes. Okay. Look, actually, at this point, I'm going to open up, and I would invite somebody in the audience to pick a number. And if you pick a number, you get to ask a question of me or anybody else in the audience. A question. Okay, about probably about the topic or about learning. So who would like to have a go at picking a number?
Pick 6.
Yeah. 6? Ah!
Cheat.
Okay.
I feel like you projected it into my head.
Okay. This,
Telepath in the audience. Thank you.
this is cool.
Every other card says choose 6.
Okay. So a little rainbow here. Would you care to guess what the story may be about?
The prize at the end of the rainbow.
It could be.
Pot of gold.
I'll try to come up with a prize next time. But for this time, this story is about, look, something that's obvious, but it's a bit, look, I find that it would be interesting for me to ask you guys. Okay, and it is this. We need to talk about Swift diversity program. Okay, so this is Watson on day 48 when he was sharing about the industry. I must say that the first day I was here, September last year, CocoaHeads meet up first time. I walked in here, okay, I immediately thought, oh, I better turn around. And it's because I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be the only woman here, but what happened was Christian looked at me and he smiled, and I'm like, oh shit, I can't go now because they'll be rude. And we've become friends, and I really appreciate the people here who makes me feel welcome. And also Zach, obviously, spoken to me and made me feel welcome and given me this opportunity to share about my journey and myself with you guys. Now, what's interesting is I had, for better or worse, found myself working with a lot of guys in my life. So it's interesting for me to reflect on this. It says here gender and beyond, and there's a heart here. This is a heart. Okay, and my take at the moment is that it's not so much about gender, it's simply about people. And one of the big experience I had when I was working in finance and investments was I was a chartered financial analyst, which is a professional qualification for that industry. And I happened to participate in the professional body, so the Chartered Financial Analysts Society of Australia, and we organise events. And then we also network with people in the field. And one of the things that I did as an initiative was I start creating Lunch and Learn series that is beyond the technical. So up until then, a lot of what we talked about was technical stuff. So I started a Lunch and Learn series, which is about, career development, networking skills, diversity, that type of thing, and invite the speakers to come and speak. And then one day I did experience this male colleague of mine. Again, he's not an immediate colleague, but he's an industry colleague. And he just said, "Nicole, you don't understand." He said, "Women have it so good. And I don't understand why you don't appreciate it. When I started, my boss verbally and physically abused me. But he would be so nice and so polite to the ladies. And look, I also obviously understand a lot of the arguments on the women's side, obviously, because, believe it or not, I experience them. And, but ultimately, I do find that these days it's about people, that we just all have different lenses. And to illustrate that, I have this photo which is quite famous, I think. Christian, you're going to say.
I'm going to get into trouble for breaking this particular section up, but do you think you can get your final points across in the next 5 to 10 minutes, just so we respect the rest?
Oh yes, I apologize.
Sorry.
So this is a famous picture for that it can be looked at two ways, right? Depending on your prior perception of what this is about. So for me, it really is about biases, curiosity, confidence, and responsibility. And the responsibility is to speak and to listen. I wouldn't actually go into this, but I would love to hear from you guys about why you think that there are not as many women here. And I think a quote that I love is that this is a famous author, Marcel Proust, who wrote about perception and memory. And he said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So a question for you. Okay, rapid fire, next number. Oh, Camille, would you have any questions for the audience around?
No, I'll let you carry on.
Okay, somebody else pick a number?
7.
7? Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so would you care to guess what this is about?
Automation.
Yes. So towards the end, actually about a month ago, a friend of mine, she's not she's not trained in technology at all. She doesn't have a technology background. But she's highly intelligent and educated. And she sent me this article with the comment in her text message, "Soon there will be no need to learn coding." And what that article is about Peter Thiel's investment in a machine learning startup called Cognition AI, which apparently is trying to automate coding. I would love to hear, and if we don't have time right now, what you guys think about this topic. Would anyone like to make a quick comment?
I have a quick comment.
Yes.
Does that say gold medalist coders?
Yes.
I think that says enough.
What is that? What, elaborate quickly?
Is there a coding Olympics?
Peter Thiel's an investor, not a technology person.
It's like
Yeah, but
algorithms.
He's
apparently-
selling money out of the hype.
You
Anyway.
think it is?
Pardon?
So basically, you think that that they're probably automating something that is a little bit esoteric? Was that?
Oh no, I think maybe they just don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, it's a bit of like a hype article or something like that.
Mm.
It's made for people who aren't. To me, it seems that it's made like an article for people who aren't fully technical.
Yeah.
Because they would read that and gold medalist. That's obviously really good, right? But in programming, we don't really give out gold medals. So anyone that's actually
I see.
technical and a programmer,
Mhm.
I don't think that's the target audience here.
It was quite a good talk at this a few months
Yeah.
ago, and
Yeah.
it went through. It can do really nice, simple stuff, hello worlds, etc. As you get more complex, it gets worse and worse, and the simpler stuff doesn't even build. It'll get better, but it's still not going to solve the real problems, which is understanding the problem, not the code itself.
I see. Great. So this is actually to do with game coding automation. But anyway, so story of machine and human. Great. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to flip open this myself now. So this is to do with practice and mastery. Okay, so there's the blank page syndrome. And what this story is about is really, you know, how do you practice, right? So in dancing, there's the concept of myelinating, right? So it's that you do deliberate practice. I wonder what deliberate practice looks like for coding, okay? And so this is like, look, I wanted to illustrate how difficult it is for me to remember what I was following along in the videos, because for the retrieval, effectively here what happened is I put a declaration of variable outside the strut and it happened not to work. So, but anyway, and also that I take a lot of notes, which I realized at the end that it was a bit of a waste of time. You think so?
Document on you as you go. Could always correct the documents. Just walking away without documentation is usually the cardinal sin.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Go back and look at code you wrote 6 months ago and curse that person.
And then realize yeah, the only comment is the automated one with your name at the top. Yeah, says I wrote this crap. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. So sometimes I wonder whether I was organizing things and trying to make notes that is kind of, I shouldn't do that. And I wonder how you guys do it. Now, when I asked my dad, okay, so he kind of says, for him, he wanted to make an index, which means that he wanted to make a list where it tells him what feature and where he did it. So in project, I don't know, Moonshot or something. And so he has a way of quickly go back to, you know, if he's looking to remember how he did a particular feature, he would then have an easy way of going to find it. I wonder how you guys organize that, because even when he told me, I find organizing that kind of thing is not so simple and easy. Okay, so story of human memory and effective practice. The last one, story, oh man. So this is, I think everybody may guess. Okay, story of,
Frustration?
yes, anger
Today.
management.
Invalid input.
Yeah, so here, okay, I just want to quickly show you. This is the screen I'm talking about. Good text field. What I wanted to do was I wanted to create a text field that has, that when I go into it, it empties it out. And then I would put numbers in. And then it would give me a formatted string. And it has 1,000, what do you call it? 1,000 separator. Okay, impossible. This is a wild goose chase that just drove me crazy. So that's, and that I was obviously getting angry. But so the 1 hour, I define that it's not often not 1 hour. So I wonder how you keep time. This real estate. There are 3 simulators here, each 7 gig, and I was keep getting errors, and that I keep having to interrupt my workflow and clean up my files, which I was not prepared to do, but I had to do. So I wonder how you all deal with that problem.
Alcohol.
So
More storage, more memory.
story of wild goose chasing and anger management. Okay, I would love some tips around that.
Alcohol. Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, I would love for you to connect with me. Okay, you can find me on LinkedIn, Slack, Facebook, Twitter. I don't like the X symbol, but anyway. Ribbon Code is on Twitter, and Nicole Liu is my name. I apologize for taking up so much time, but it's my pleasure, and thank you.
really good. Thanks, Nicole. Plenty for us to all think about. We're going to take a really quick 5-minute break, so go to the bathroom out in the corridor if you need. I think there's some
In the
food
corridor.
left.
Through the corridor.
Yeah, we're back in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really.
No question though. Cool. What about?
Yes, that's fine. Yes,
Yeah.
No, you won't.
Similar. Put in your living room.
Alright, so
They're happy with that?
welcome to something a little bit different, a bit of a fireside chat. I'm going to do my best not to talk too much during this and really let the attention go to these guys. So the idea tonight is a Vision Pro panel, discussing the device. It's recently come out and everyone else on the panel has shipped an app for it. So the idea is to talk a little bit about their experiences. And also if you have questions as we go, feel free to make this interactive. Pretty small room, can all kind of just have a bit of a chat. So yeah, feel free to jump in. We'll get started by everyone just kind of introducing themselves and a little bit about what they've shipped for the Vision Pro thus far, and we'll take it from there. I've got some preset questions, but if I don't have to use them, I'm happy to just let the conversation flow. So yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I'm the CTO at a small local company where we're doing urban mobility apps. But we're not doing anything yet with Vision Pro. But so on the side, I also have an indie app. It's called Longplay. It's a music player, and so that I've out for a couple of years. And like the main user interface for it is you have your albums and you kind of see them in a little album wall, which is kind of nice on your screen, like on your phone or your iPad. It looks nice, but when the Vision Pro was announced, I thought it's like it would be really nice to have your album wall actually wall sized. Yeah, I shipped an update earlier this year when Vision Pro came out, and that has that. And I also dove there more into sort of the immersive side, immersive space. Yeah, okay.
Brilliant, and it is really nice. So my name is Oliver Weidlich. I'm the Director of Design and Innovation at a company called Contextual, and we're a UX consultancy, so it's quite unique for us. In fact, this is the first app that we've put out. We've got an app called Day Ahead, which is a new take, or specifically we wanted to focus on what the difference is for spatial computing. So we wanted to look at how to include everyday events. So from your calendar, what is the data? So we show you a visualization of the events that you've got during your day in a really simple, beautiful, we hope, sort of 3D volume. So you can quickly check where you are in your day and what's coming up next. You can tap on those things to see the meeting. And if you want to, you can go through the calendar. So it's a small thing. Credit to Shane, who's here standing up, who actually did the development, and Jun too. Jun's here as well. So yeah, no credit for the development. So, and then we've got another one coming out. We're just about to put it in test flight, hopefully tomorrow. So if anyone wants to play with a battery monitor, amongst the many battery monitors are out there, that we'll put one out as well.
Thanks. Yeah, my name's Stuart Barrell. I enjoy solving problems and creating ideas on mobile. I've been doing that for the last 15 years, so longer than the iPhone has came out. Started off in the Nokia days, and I've been working on every new platform and every new thing that's come out ever since. And the latest thing to do that with is the Vision Pro. So I've released two apps so far. One is a cricket companion app, and that allows you to get information, statistics, and a nice 3D representation of the wagon wheel of every single ball that's been played during a cricket match. And so the idea is it's a companion to a stream or listening to a game which is currently going on. And the second app is called Newton's Cradle. It does what it says. It's a desk toy which allows you to interact with real-time physics and with some nice shader effects. And that's really for me to explore what's potential with the device, particularly looking at what's beyond just a 2D screen, a 2D representation of an app. So what happens when you start taking that to 3D and how you interact in new and interesting ways.
So I guess, what was your development experience like, sort of starting with the beta period and I guess onto now, if you have the device? I know you can't talk about the lab specifically, but sort of what was it like during that time? It's been, since June last year? Yeah, I don't know who'd like to start with it. Maybe Stuart.
Yeah, this way?
Yeah.
Difficult is probably the easiest way to put it. The experience of actually using a Vision Pro is very different to what you see in the simulator. Simulator does an amazing job of doing everything it does, but it isn't the representative of the real life. Saying that, I think what Apple did in terms of releasing everything early and giving time to explore and try things was the right way to do it. And also the fact they've been putting these labs on. And for those of you who aren't aware, you can go to Apple Developer Centre in Sydney and you can try Vision Pro and get experience of that, either with an existing app or just taking what you've got currently and playing with it there. I do those every couple of weeks, and that's been invaluable. That's where I met Oliver, was when they started doing those in Singapore, and now luckily they do them just down the road here. So yeah, it's been a challenging experience. Amazing to try new things. It's a new paradigm, a new way of looking at things, and so it's kind of a bit mind-bending at times, but yeah, also really valuable, and I found it really interesting. It's something new, something shiny, but also something I think has got great potential for future development. So.
Yeah, for the development detail, I'm going to refer you to Shane and John for later. But as a process, yeah, it has been really tricky, as Stuart said, because of that lack of access. But again, the developer labs have been brilliant. We've had the opportunity to go to 5 now, and it's been super useful. We've got the luxury of now having a headset, so it's extremely handy to have that and be able to develop on it without needing to go to the labs and things like that. So that's been great for us. And as Stuart said as well, it's that opportunity to rethink computing through this whole different way of interaction and purpose, right? Like, we haven't had an opportunity to have that spatial computing of content, activities, volumes, things in this space and around the physical space. That interaction with digital content in the physical world is amazing. We've got a couple of other headsets like the Magic Leap 1, the Magic Leap 2, the MetaQuest 3 example, for example, for other mixed reality experiences. And the Magic Leap 2 is really useful for prototyping things with gaze and gestures in the lead up to getting access through the dev labs and so on. But it's a very low fidelity prototype version of the Vision Pro. There's nothing quite like having it and getting your hands on it.
Yeah, like for me, I only had the simulator and the lab, so I didn't have sort of the other devices to go to. But yeah, for me, the big thing, like the labs are really so valuable, because you try something out in the simulator and it looks fine, and it's you apply what you know from iPhone and iPad to it. And like in the simulator, it works fine. But then if you actually try it out in a lab, you very quickly notice all the, like that you need to approach many things differently. Like one thing that stood out for me early on was where I was thinking, okay, this other, like the app has multiple features, and to go rather than sort of doing transitions in one window, it might make sense to put that into another window, show that on the side. But then when you start playing a lot with windows in Vision OS on the device, what you notice very quickly is that just the window management gets quite annoying, or it gets quite a lot of work that you then need to do to actually physically manage the windows. And yeah, well, that then changed like immediately after the first lab. Okay, I need to rethink sort of my overall, the top level UX architecture.
I found one of the different things was when you look at things in a simulator, you're looking at a very small screen. But then actually when you're looking at the device, like everything is a screen. And so I was really worried about things like text sizes and readability and thinking that everything's going to have to be massive. But actually it's not. Like when you actually see something on a device, it's like, you don't have to worry about that stuff. Kind of Apple does the hard work of making sure that everything's legible at any of the sizes that they offer. So it's just small things like that which were difficult to understand without seeing it on a physical device.
Two questions. One, might want to ponder and come back to how good is the local technical support at the labs? If you hit a problem, do they actually have the coding expertise to go, well, here I've hit this problem, can you have any suggestions? It's great to have the access, but do they actually have the good local support that you can actually get real-time suggestions on ways to do it or solve it?
I think you have to be careful here because the labs are under NDA,
Okay.
so we can't talk about the labs specifically. So
okay. The other one was have you had to deal with much to do with different accessibility for Vision OS or XROS, whatever you want?
Just briefly on the first question, like one thing I guess we can say is like the developer relations team is really good at getting you like feedback quickly, even if they might not know answers. Like also same sort of after the labs, they do really want to help people, like developers with that. So there's
it's really good support.
Yeah.
And accessibility, especially for this OS?
Accessibility, so we had some friends of ours in Topia in today who are accessibility specialists. So we're going to be doing some specific research around getting a range of different abilities of people to come in and to use the device and to explore how they resolve. So, the other day I was playing around with some of the accessibility options. So you can make sound, so click like can prompt the display of the home icons, for example. So you can associate sounds to prompt actions. You've got things like dwell control for gaze, so that you don't need to actually use your hands at all. You can just use your eyes. So I think, as we know with Apple, that they've done a really great start for accessibility. Another friend of ours, Christian Daz in Berlin, has got an open source project called Reality Check, which allows you to interrogate certain elements and aspects of your app for accessibility properties. So there's a bunch going on, and again, it's the start of a platform, right? So I think it's a very good starting position.
1 or whatever we're at now.
Yeah. But even as a community to create, to explore some of those aspects, I think it's a great starting place.
Yeah, one of the things I discovered recently was that in 3D you've got the same accessibility features that you've got within SwiftUI, for example. So you can add an accessibility element to a 3D sphere and add voiceover support and all the other attributes you'd normally associate with a regular element. So I think Apple have done a great job of introducing that into the space.
We had a lady in today who only has the use of one eye, so we're really interested in, while she has two eyes open, so we're really interested in that. And it was only afterwards that we found out that we could actually set her to have one eye. So she just sort of got through it all and it worked fine, but we then found that setting. So it's amazing that that's even there.
Yeah, quick question. A couple of questions. One was around code reuse. I think you mentioned you had an iPad app. Did you manage to get any of that code? Was any of it useful? And how, if you have got a multi-platform app that works on Pro, how hard was that to do? Because it feels a little bit like the days when the iPad came out and everyone just created a separate iPad app rather than having one code base, or at least all these different conditions all over the place making a mess. And the other question, kind of related, I guess, was just around what was your experience of using SwiftUI to build these kind of 3D apps? Because I've done 3D work in the past, and SwiftUI is a very different way of going about it, and I've struggled with it a little bit. It's a very different paradigm to me to build 3D stuff using that method. So yeah, how was that?
Yeah, so from my app, most of the code is shared, especially everything under the hood. That's basically the same code, the same framework that I use there. But on the user interface side, there's a lot of these kind of if target or if OS, Vision OS statements. But it's not so much out of necessity. It's more like for tweaking, like different you want to use different paddings for sizing. And like what I ended up with, I do have like a separate target for the visualized version of my app, and that's mostly because the the main app is still using the old UI kit lifecycle, but I wanted to play with things like the immersive space, and I then like at first I tried to kind of stick it into the same build, but then it just got too messy that I found it's easier to like that part, sort of the very top level of the app separately.
Yeah. So you go.
Yeah, with the Cricket app, it was initially an iPhone, iPad app, and it's ported directly to Vision. So all the base code is the same. I was lucky in that I'd only started that one recently, so it was kind of all the new Swift UI stuff anyway. And I don't have any old dependencies. But in terms of the actual code, it's like, yeah, there's a few too many if OS version things in there, which aren't pretty, but I think not necessary, but are things that are nice to have. But yeah, in terms of Swift UI, it supports everything I think that anything else does. In terms of the 3D side of it, so Reality Kit is the new way that Apple's pushing all the 3D side of things. It's declarative, so it kind of borrows a lot of the Swift UI things. That makes some stuff very easy, makes some other stuff very difficult. So yeah, I mean, it's coming from a 3D background myself. It was kind of a bit of a trying to get my head around this new way of doing things, but it kind of marries really nicely with Swift UI.
It was more a matter of migrating to Reality Kit than necessarily the Vision Pro part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's kind of, it taps into all the observable stuff and everything, so it kind of feeds off the same. If something updates, then the Reality View updates as well. So it's quite nice in that regard, but it's just works slightly differently to everything else in terms of if you made a game before in SceneKit or have you done stuff in Unity, it's kind of just a different mindset, a way of looking at things.
Yeah, on the 3D stuff, like I'm not coming from the 3D side, so I was very happy to see that you can achieve a lot of 3D effects with Swift UI, just purely from sort of the position and offset modifiers by using like the Z-axis and using the new sort of rotation 3D modifiers. So what I have in my immersive space is I have an album wall of all your albums that's kind of curved around you. And that I did purely in Swift UI, just by positioning, offsetting all the different albums and rotating them a little bit. That math took me a while to figure out, but it worked in the end.
Yeah, actually, you answered that question because I wonder. You said to the Vision use UI kit components for the visual components. I was wonder to how to constrain that components dynamically when you put to your that gesture is going to the height up like that. But when the developing to how to developing that constraints dynamically give to height in UI kit, I was wondering.
Yeah, so that part I do in Swift UI, but if you have UI kit views you want to use, you can use the regular sort of UI hosting view or UI view representable to bring in your UI kit views.
So also use Reality Kit or AR Kit inside the Vision OS fundamentally.
I don't use it much. Like I started playing around a little bit with AR Kit, and like one thing I was playing around with is I had this idea for not related specifically to my app, but in terms of window management. It would be really nice rather than always just moving your windows around sort of manually. I thought, what if you had something like a dock where you can take a window and put it on your arm and kind of to minimize it, and then from there you can then fling it and make it bigger again. But there's no way of doing any of that with the SDK. But I thought about playing around with that idea in my app, just then by putting sort of the albums you've queued up onto your arm. So I've played a little bit there sort of with the AR Kit anchoring side. But that's, yeah, for me, the tricky thing there is there's not a lot of sort of tutorials or sort of to use and have a look at. Like you basically have the couple of WWDC videos and sort of that sample code there, which is good. But for some things, I was please give me more. I just would like to see more examples. from
And-
other people.
And unfortunately, our kit isn't available in the shared space, so it's sort of one of those key differentiators, but it's not there to
Nor-
leverage.
Nor available in the simulator.
Yeah, actually, I cannot have a simulator for Vision OS test, but maybe will come to publicly. So I was wonder the physical motor is becomes to fundamental of AR kits or reality kits might be. So I wonder because I was used to AR kit to measure normal physical interactions to like how meter this area. Like that's basically projects.
Yeah, so some of that is available on device, but isn't available in the simulator.
Yeah.
But even on the device, there's lots of restrictions around what you can access and what you can't. So you don't get access to what the camera sees. Like there's lots of restrictions around for privacy reasons and maybe some technical reasons as well. But you're given kind of very little information about what's happening and what you are given. You can do a lot with, but you have to sort of preface your ideas around what you can actually do. So if you've got lots of people who had AR experiences previously on phones were disappointed that they couldn't just port them across because you don't get the same information between them. So you have to rethink your ideas, or some ideas just aren't possible at the moment on Vision Pro.
Yeah.
That's version 1.
Yeah, and with those kind of things like what they pushed on in the from the developer relations team at Apple, like if there's anything that you want to do which is not yet in there, file feedback, because they're really looking at those feedback specifically, kind of what's missing in Vision OS, and yeah, just file those and say what you want to use it for.
Prioritizing for version 2.
Get it in soon, I guess.
Quick, the DC's coming.
So what other things you all want to see next? Stuart and I wrote a blog post on this. But yeah, I guess both as a user and as a developer, what do you think would make sense in a V2 for software?
Yeah, so I've just written a blog post about this very topic because it was top of mind. But yeah, more access to the AR stuff in general, particularly more access in the simulator because it's impossible to do. So it's kind of the fundamentals there, but it's not possible. Object detection and other things like that, which will unlock a whole host of new experiences. For me, the number one thing they need to do is just get it out. Like it's because it's US only at the moment. That restricts the opportunity so much. So having opening up more access to things. Everyone knows window management is bad. They're going to have to do something about that from a user point of view. But there's lots of things that they could do from a developer's point of view to make some of the Windows stuff easier as well. And those sort of some of the things. They've done a great job of getting version 1 out. There's lots that they can hopefully do with version 2. Whether version 2 is WWDC in a few months, I don't know because it's quite soon, but hopefully they've been working hard behind the scenes.
There are a bunch of country codes in some of the new betas, aren't there? Including Australia.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Oh, sorry.
And then similar to that, for us specifically, we're using the volumes in the shared space. So, if you look back to other platforms like Magic Leap 1, for example, and LumenOS, you were able to take an object and, for simplicity, let's say a clock, and you want to have that in your shared space, right? So it would do the plane detection that there's a wall there, it would magnetize to the wall, and it wouldn't have the controls sitting on. You could actually lock it in position. And then, one of the issues for us is that everything that we create has got a little grab handle and a close button. And, it just muddies the visual clarity of these things. They're not locked in. So as soon as if you bring all your windows together, everything comes back. And, we've all talked about that things need to be spatially anchored. And at the moment, there's some bugs around, they all come together every now and then. And there's windows behind windows, behind windows, behind windows. And it all gets a bit confusing. Yeah.
Like for me, one of the things I would really like to see is having MapKit in Vision OS, because at the moment it's only like you can port it into Vision OS from UI, but it's just always like a 2D plane. And like I'm working like at my main job, we're doing a lot of stuff with maps, and it would just be really exciting if if all the 3D mapping information, like you could start building on that, because I think there you can really make some amazing experiences.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Sorry, so I guess following on from that, Stuart, you read another blog post.
It's called Stew Vision. It's called Stew Vision, yeah? You should all sign up. It's awesome.
You said Vision Pro apps look boring, and I wanted to ask if you still are of this opinion now that apps are out for it, and if there's any kind of standout interfaces that you've seen since the launch.
And do you mean our apps in particular?
Yeah. We'll set those aside.
I still believe that Vision Pro apps are boring, and the main reason is because Apple has made it so easy to convert existing apps into the spatial space. It's very easy just to say new target Vision and then go. And there's, I think that one of the main problems for me is individually the apps look fantastic. Like if you open an app up and you look at an app, the glass effects that Apple does, the lighting and everything, the fact that they've got shadows underneath, so it looks like they're in the real world, like they look great. But then as soon as you then go to the next app, and then the next app, and the next app, and they all look the same. For me, it's the fact that because it was so easy, everyone has ended up with something that's very similar in what they do. And when you think about the future of computing, and you think about things, concepts that people have put together around what augmented reality means, and how you interact with things, there's so much more that could be done. And I'm just hoping that Apple make it slightly easier to go beyond the base of what they're doing, and just simple things like being able to tint the glass effect and make that your own in terms of customized to your own application. It's easy to bring 3D stuff into the apps, but so much overhead for a developer to do that. I don't think it's going to be possible for everyone to suddenly transform their 2D apps into 3D interactions, but making things easier and sort of expanding that. And just I hope having more people have access to the device and just experimenting and trying new things, like what Oliver's been doing with his stuff. And in terms of that sort of 3D wall as well, it's like stuff like that, which I think is where the future needs to go, but I just hope more people do interesting stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd like to follow on to that one. Do you think that it's going to change the skill set a little bit? So those boring apps that you mentioned, they're basically just like iPad apps on they're flat. Do you think that people who work on that platform need to upskill to understand 3D graphics now? Like so some of the mathematical foundations of 3D graphics, that kind of things, because you mentioned that it took you ages to figure out how to curve something, right? It's for someone who works on 3D graphics, that wouldn't be so bad. But for someone who's coming at it new, you've got to do research, you've got to figure out the equations for the circle and arcs, all that kind of stuff. So do you feel like it's going to become a
not necessarily. Like things like that, that should be a built-in view. Like you should be able to say, I want a curved view for this thing, and I want to put my windows, and you shouldn't have to worry about
parameters and
the things. And whether that's something that Apple does or a framework that someone else puts in place, or a package that someone else does, those are the kind of things where I think it's going to iterate very quickly as more and more people get involved. And things like pull to refresh, which came
late to the party.
But it suddenly became like every single app had the same paradigm. I think that's the kind of thing that I'm expecting, but just a lot more visual and a lot more impressive in terms of how things are doing. And yeah, it will come. It's just we're at version 1, or it doesn't even feel like version 1 at the moment because not everyone has access to it.
So currently, it is still the pretty like the apps hanging in the air instead of the real 3D interaction or whatever.
Yeah, and to be the devil's advocate, like I totally agree with Stuart, but I think for Apple to take this approach where you can bring an iPad app in so easily is critical to the success of the platform, to make it a transitional experience, right? So that I can go in now, and while Notion and Slack haven't created their own native apps, I can use them functionally. And in a day-to-day spatial computing experience, that's far more useful than Slack trying to rethink what a 3D version of stuff. And that comes down to needs and behavior, right? Like what is actually appropriate and does 3D benefit is the question that we should be asking and so on. And for some apps, more importantly, there'll be whole new experiences that we can do that we haven't even thought of yet, right? Like if we look back to the mobile first from Luca Bluesky, etc., like Uber, Instagram were whole new experiences because of the nature of the iPhone. And we'll have exactly the same process here. I think it's great that we've got the transitional interfaces. They're not exciting, but they're functional. But they will get that platform, hopefully, with people using it in a functional way and therefore starting to explore and looking at the way that gesture and this type of interaction is different, that will then expand the platform.
So I have a question that you are using the Vision Pros. So I'm not sure whether the Vision Pro has provided any accessible interfaces to interact with the real world objects like that, to allow your apps to interact with your with the real world objects.
Yeah. So you have these different ways of building the app. One is just like as a regular window, there's like no interaction, or even like as a volume, which is like a more like a 3D window. Like those are then the apps which exist in what's called the shared space. But there you have no access to any of the information about the actual sort of real 3D space around you. Only when you go to the level where you build an immersive space, where it's then only your app running, where you get some of the information about sort of anchors for walls, kind of for your hands. You get, or even like sort of a 3D mesh, I think, of the world around you. Like there you get it, but that's not the way where, okay, I get my app, like I tick the box, get it to compile and get it working. That's just sort of that window side of things. Then if you want to build an immersive version of it, that's a whole lot more work. But there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, I think if you look at a platform like Magic Leap, for example, where you have the same similar sensors and things like that, you can relatively quickly build something that interacts with the physical world in probably a slightly deeper way. But we have to remember that this is P1, right? And like there's so much opportunity and so much to go, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, and just on the original question, kind of whether sort of these apps are boring. Like I think it's good to kind of get to the stage where we have a lot of boring apps, because now I think it's the really exciting time where it's like, okay, we got the boring part done. Now it's the exciting things we can build on top of it.
Yeah, I'd hate to see, bugs flying at you and you have to squish them and those things when you're trying to deal with it. Like that's not what I'm talking about. It's just, I think at the moment it's very conservative. It's great. Like you can pull up 5 different apps and they all look like nice and they all work together and it's very aesthetic. But this platform feels like it should be so much more.
But it's good to have millions of apps that work out of the box instead of there are 50 a year later.
Yeah, and that, that's the big thing that Apple's got going for it, is that any iPad app you can just bring up and start using. It doesn't necessarily work great, but you can at least use it, which is more than any of the other platforms.
Do you think if there's a risk though that if it stays like that for a long time, people will just start to wonder why don't we just buy a big monitor, a big 49-inch monitor and put my windows all over the place? Like if it just becomes flat windows all over the place and it kind of stagnates at that point, and there's no innovation in terms of the user interfaces, because maybe Apple don't want to do those things that you mentioned, the curved screens, and they're kind of leaving it to developers to do it. Do you feel like there's a risk that it could kind of, if we don't get that interesting stuff coming through that excites people, that it becomes a bit boring and everyone just wonders why a big monitor?
I think even the flat windows, like even if we just take that as a base experience, it is a very different experience to have a big screen monitor in front of you versus windows all around you in different positions. Like you've come to the office, like I'll have a bunch of screens set up around the lounge chair at the front of our office. I've got a bunch of, a clock and a battery monitor in the back of the office. I've got other screens set up in the meeting room and things like that. So I think even just flat screens, spatially anchored, is fascinating and opens up a whole range. But I think that we have to get used to this different way of computing first to understand what those opportunities are.
I used to have 2 monitors and I got really fed up having 2 monitors. Like I hated the border in the middle, all that kind of stuff. So I got 1 monitor that was like, put everything on my 1 monitor, and it helped me focus as well on my work. I just wonder how gimmicky it is to have windows all over the place. Like how useful do you find it having?
Yeah, so what I do specifically is I have different modes of computing, probably, and you all experience this now of what do you do on your iPhone versus what do you do on your Mac versus what do you do on your iPad, right? And this is another device, or your Apple Watch. This is another device. So for me, I'll go and sit on the lounge, whether I'm at home or in the office, when I want to go into that mode of, I'm going to review stuff, I'm going to respond to stuff on Slack, I'm going to read stuff in Notion, I'm going to read my mail and respond and reply there and organize things in my calendar, right? I'm not sitting there to write big, long documents or anything like that, though I could grab the keyboard and the trackpad to do it. But it allows me a very different mode in the sense of I feel far more relaxed because I don't have a keyboard and a mouse and stuff, and I'm just gesturing and interacting with the content. I can react really quickly in terms of things like that. So to me, it depends on the types of tasks that you do. For me, it's really suitable for about probably 2 hours a day of work. And I enjoy the change in mode, right? Like instead of being at the desk all day in front of the computer monitor, I like going and doing that as a different experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say like how when the iPhone first came out, there was like a whole bunch of like lighter apps and beer apps, and I imagine like that's gonna happen with like Vision OS.
Lightsaber app.
Yeah.
There you go.
The mirror app, make the screen black.
Yeah.
I would probably observe that somebody did a good point is that even with flat screens, you can have as many 4K monitors as you want, which I constantly for work and looking at documentation and API docs and code and whatever. That isn't easy to do with with physical monitors.
Yeah.
You need a massive, expensive equipment and a huge amount of real estate to run 4 or 8 monitors. I can have as many as I want. That just with flat is still a huge paradigm shift and makes the 7-ish grand not bad versus buying a shitload of 4K monitors.
Well, and it goes with you, right? Like potentially, you can take it wherever you go, and you have those. Yeah, exactly. It's not at work.
Yeah.
It's not at home.
Yeah, I also could see your point about it sort of getting boring or dull or uninteresting. Like, I don't think we'll get to that stage because once you start using it and you start seeing the potential, like there's going to be lots of new ideas and lots of things happen. It's just a case of does Apple do that first? Do the developers do that? And it gets
3D 4K movies is going to take that's several million sales straight away.
Well, that whole entertainment aspect is a whole different thing, right? But work, to some degree, it's functional stuff, right? Like we're not there to be entertained when we do work. We're there to get work done, and this enables that in a whole different way. And then in terms of immersive content, and it's phenomenal as an experience in that. But yeah, you can buy a lot of movie tickets to IMAX.
It's really good to see that you think it's going to be really useful for work. Because my fear for the device was that it might just turn into a bit like an iPad, where I bought an iPad and I downloaded all these cool apps for it, and then I sold it like 6 months later because I couldn't do anything on it because of the OS and all that kind of stuff. So it's really good that in version 1 you feel like you're getting work out of it. That makes it a very different device to me.
But I also love the iPad, so
I use my iPad daily more than my phone by a lot.
So I got a question. So in your experience, like, is there any sweet point that you would recommend developer like us, like person developer do, like from the easiest like 2D flight, just migrate, right, to the most complex like 3D immersive, which I assume is too much person developer. So is there any sweet point in between that in your experience you would recommend people or developer to focus at this point?
I'll take this one because we have, and much to Shane's credit, I don't think he would necessarily define himself as a iOS developer first and foremost. He's a UX designer and a great one. But the particular reason why we started with this platform was to do something small and useful and different. And I think it's been a great platform to achieve that. Like we've done something that we hope is interesting and useful as opposed to a to-do screen. So I think, and have a chat to Shane afterwards, but I think this in that Swift and UI has enabled us to achieve this quite quickly and quite simply, starting from scratch. So I think the opportunity is to if this is going to be your first app for Vision OS, take that opportunity to think about something differently, understand those user needs and behaviors of who you're trying to meet the needs of, and think about how you could do that volumetrically or immersively or something, just as a clean idea.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if in terms of structure, is it like a 2D screen plus 3D object, or like a 3D window on its own?
Either. Yeah, I think they work quite well together.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, and in terms of the implementation, they're very similar. So that's
Okay.
kind of what's nice. That's a very smooth sort of learning curve from getting sort of your first 3D model into it. One thing that I encourage you is like there are actually a lot of 3D models that you can use on Vision OS out on the web. That's something when I looked into Unity 10 years ago when I got the Oculus developer kit and played around with that. And what I really liked there was that even in Unity, I think it was integrated like an asset store. That's why, hey, I need now this kind of asset and get it in. I think that's something that Apple should get better at, just making that next step is easier, similar to how with SF symbols for getting in nice icons. Give me something similar for getting in some 3D content. But in general, it's a smooth curve thanks to Reality Kit.
Yeah, I think we'll move very quickly away from you have a 2D interface and there's a 3D thing sticking out from it. It's very easy to do right now, but I can't see that being
transition.
The long-term way that we interact with this device.
12 months, whatever.
The example app that I like from Apple is the diorama thing, where it's a 3D interface at heart, but there's 2D content. So it's kind of reversed around how a lot of the things are, where it's like there's a 2D thing and you click on something and something 3D appears. Like it's 3D and you're interacting. But that's a very specific, you have to go in and start interacting with the 3D stuff. So it's kind of not something you'd want to do for a work app, but it's a lot more interesting way of doing it. It's difficult. Putting 3D for the sake of 3D isn't worth it. Just stick with the 2D stuff and just do that really well and concentrate on how windows are managed and how you're showing content and how you're navigating through, rather than just adding the 3D for the sake of it.
So generally, it sounds like Apple didn't provide any kind of best practice to how to leverage the ability of the Vision Pro.
Well, I think they've provided a lot of examples and third party, Jigspace obviously.
But we need a way to make the best use of the Vision Pro's all the abilities or interfaces like that.
So they provide a lot of information in their human interface guidelines of what not to do.
Just not to do.
I think it's difficult. I don't think anyone really knows what to do yet. I think that's kind of where we come in.
Yeah, because for now, the only idea that for using the Vision Pro is that we can move the iPad apps or iPhone apps into the Vision Pro, but we don't know what is the biggest difference or the benefits by using the Vision Pro to use those apps, or we can do for that. Just like, for example, because if you play the games, if you have the Nintendo Switch, the Zelda is the best practice for the Switch. But kind of I didn't find any best practice application or best practice demos for Vision Pro to leverage all of these abilities.
I think that those are that's now up to us to kind of hey, we have these tools now. What can we do with it? And I think for me the big question is kind of what is there sort of in that 3D spatial side that is applicable to productivity. I was debugging an issue before in Xcode in the visual debugger. I was thinking I want to see this thing in 3D in Vision Pro. That would be so much better. And I think there are certain aspects where there can really be then not just a 2D window in sort of floating in 3D space. But yeah, we kind of have to start exploring that.
I think straight after WWDC panel, one of the comments was the guys from Cochlear about mapping in the data from MRI scans to assist the surgeons doing the surgery. This is the scan of the patient. We now have that, and we can map that in real time into what we're actually doing. I mean, that's just a genius solution, but it's niche. Architecture, 3D building, some of those sort of things, but they're not everyday uses. But
yeah, and I think that's the opportunity is to rethink and go, okay, well, how can you enhance the physical world with digital content and digital instructions and things like that. That's why Jigspace is fascinating, because you can see a model of something that's in life size, which is a whole different perspective. We've been out at hospitals where we're showing just the Insight Heart app, and the doctors and the clinicians are blown away that you can see the resolution itself of these things is fascinating. And we've seen HoloLens before, we've seen Magic Leap, these optical see-through AI headsets. but the resolution and the quality of the imagery just adds a whole nother layer of quality of experience to these types of things that are very valuable for people who need that sort of, or benefit from that sort of thing.
Could be fantastic for training material too.
100%, absolutely.
Super high resolution 3D mapping AR of what the actual thing is doing, not some little flat diagrams and crappy videos.
Yeah, so with construction, for example, we were talking about, okay, walking through a building site and having an overlay of the Revit, the CAD model essentially, of the site while the building is in progress, and being able to walk through and mark up where things aren't meeting spec, right?
And the sequencing of installations and whatever.
Exactly. So
I think that
it's whole new use cases, basically.
to expand upon that, I think the real benefit of this device comes in when you start bringing multiple people in.
Mm.
Like if you have
Yeah,
two
they
of
collaborate,
you,
yeah.
wearing this, walking next to you, you're pointing to something, you're drawing on that appears in my thing while I'm there. It appears in someone else's environment while they're back at the office. It's this kind of collaborative side of things which I think really gets unlocked. And when you start thinking about that, and that's barely been touched upon. I've not seen really there's a few games where there's multiplayer, but the connectivity and that multi-peer aspect of having lots of people who can all see the same thing, but from their own perspectives and get involved, there's things you can do there, but you can't do in anything else.
I thought it was really interesting in the Dub presentation when they launched it. There was only ever one person wearing it.
Mm.
Even if there was kind of on a FaceTime call with other people, they were all kind of in a normal on another device, right?
That's because there was only one in the world at that point.
but like yesterday, $1 million. But yesterday we had the NVIDIA announcement, right, of the Omniverse being viewable from the Vision Pro, which is going to open up a whole new opportunity in terms of quality of looking at assets, of collaborating on assets, of interacting with those 3D high fidelity models in real time. So I think that sort of thing, even only months after launch, is pretty impressive.
I have a question. When the developing in the Vision OS in the asset management or RAM performancing, how you can calculate or measure that issues? Like the iOS development, you put an asset is around 2000 x2000 multiplier is gets in the memory heap around multiply 2000 megabytes RAM is taking. So in the Vision OS, maybe model is USDTZ, so they are big actually for the assets in the compared to spec or image. So how to scale that memory management in the Vision OS?
Yeah, I mean it's the same as you do with anything else. Like the Vision Pro itself is a very powerful device.
Mm-hmm.
It's on par with a lot of laptops in terms of its performance. I've used OBJ files in there. I've used GLB files. It's not just that I'm going to use the whole USDZ kind of.
So system automatic manage that things, or developer must to I need to how to take that area to prevalent that the loads when
So Reality
compiling.
Kit has a lot of built. This is one of the things it's good at, and one of the things it's maybe not so good at is it has lots of inbuilt performance things in there for you. So it'll do automatic LOD stuff for you, like resize bitmap textures and all that kind of stuff. It's like pre-calculated and will help you there. I don't think you can then get in and do that yourself. I don't think you have access to that pipeline. So it's kind of, if you're in the really advanced end, I think you'll probably struggle in terms of doing things. But I've seen some very impressive game demos of people bringing their Unity things into the Vision Pro and it working with barely any changes. It's one of those things.
It's coding straight down to metal and hardware assistance and whatever. So
I was going to say, the other end of the scale is you can access the metal side of it and do it all yourself if you really want to go down that route. No, that's way beyond my pay scale. So
it would be nice if more of those tools made it to the Swift UI side of things, because the way I'm doing it, just with Swift UI views and lots of large images, it's very easy to reach the memory limits on the device.
Yeah. Shouldn't like so much music.
Thousand albums.
Tell my users, yeah. How many albums do you have here?
I've got a question. So coming back to the point, Oliver, about doing specific work in or work context in these specific places. So that might be the feature that makes me buy it. So you might be able to sell it.
I don't get commission, but I'm a shareholder. So.
Yeah, me too. We both win. I was thinking, how does the Vision Pro, does that handle anything in terms of like saving windows and restoring them? Like, because I was imagining that it would somehow, you could set up, like map your room, set up some locations or use the focus modes and things, you know. When I sit down, it pops up and then you can bring yourself back into that context immediately. So I guess without that, how do you use that in a work context to sort of imitate that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So the first one is, I think it's something that, well, certainly should happen. I think it will happen. I think it needs to happen. There's been a lot of commentary around that. At the moment, and with the 1.1 update, there's the ability now to sort of create shortcuts to pop things up for you. So I think it's literally a shortcut to that sort of thing. But for me, it tends to be a bit more ad hoc. And it's interesting that Siri, you know, this is a real multimodal interface. So Siri, I can just ask Siri to open this app and it pops up in front of me in seconds, right? Like, so it sort of just makes everything easy to call upon. And sometimes when you've got so many windows open, part of the problem is finding those windows and getting it, right? So you tend to start off with not that many anyway. You might have 4 or 5. And, you know, our aim with our, we call them desk accessories, like the original Macintosh had the little utilities like the puzzle and the notepad, etc. Because we want them to fit around and just fit in your workspace around. So I think you sort of curate your workspace as needed. And, you know, for me, that's usually Slack, Notion, a web browser, obviously, email, and my calendar view from day ahead. But you can change that stuff so comfortably and easily and move something around and pop it up out of the way and then bring something else
But
in.
you would have to do that every time.
At the moment you do, yeah.
But I think it does it already. Like, it already does sort of that recognition of the space, and it kind of has knowledge, kind of, hey, this is kind of, you are now at your home and here you're at your work. At least in one of the WWDC.
It's not as stable as you might hope. Yeah. So, you know, and you know, it's kind of tricky. So I move between home and office, and because we've done these 60 demos, we're putting people into guest mode, we're taking it out, putting it, and we're testing stuff. Shane's got the headset on, I've got the headset on. So it's probably not a classic single user experience. But we will go into, like, I'll put the headset back on when I had it a moment ago. All those windows will still be there where I left them, right? But then I'll walk into the other room and most of them will be bare, but one will be facing the other way or something. But again, it just feels like 1.0 stuff rather than significant issues or fundamental issues.
Back about OS 8 or 9, they had the idea of a setting. And that setting would include your network settings. You know, literally you could go, I'm at home, and it would change all the settings to each of those profiles. And you go, I'm at the office, and it would swap all the profiles.
Printers.
Yeah.
But we don't have that today on the Mac.
Like
it's
yes, I don't understand why. I don't understand why they've been interested in the 20 years in between.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to your point, all the underlying core technology is there. Like, it knows where you are and it maps your location, it stores that, blah, blah, blah. It just, they haven't pieced it together yet. So if it doesn't come.
And I'm assuming we don't have access to those APIs yet either.
Well, so that, yeah, the other point is there's lots of this stuff which you can't access, or you can as an individual app, but then you can't like work with other apps and like, collaborate together. So,
yeah, I mean, restarting your Mac, you get your Windows back in that were there, right? And we hope that that's going to happen.
Actually, remember when I built the POC, there's something in ARKit we call AR roadmap. It basically store on the cloud anchors and meshes. Whenever you're restoring a scene, it will basically restore on the anchors, and then on the object that you put the anchor on, it will pop up in there. It's just similar to what ARKit provides.
Yeah, so that's all there as a framework. It's just not being used, or you can't access it in the way that you would like to. But yeah, as an app, you can do stuff cleverly like that.
Do we have any takers for the last question? They've all been great questions so far, but if anyone's got.
That's an easy one. How long do you think it'll be until it's mature? Like I feel like iOS was around 6 or 7 maybe. It's pretty good. What do you think?
I think they're off to a very good start. Like if you compare to, because they are building off the base of other platforms, like as there are all these issues that we're talking about, but I don't see them as significant issues. I think I think it's more about how far can we extend it and what, like it's just simply things that we haven't thought of yet that they might be thinking about. If you follow people like Avi Barziv and so on who've worked on the project early on, like they allude to certain things that are coming. I think all the share play stuff, that collaborative aspect, I think we know that Apple have the frameworks for that. They've implemented other platforms. I think that will add a whole nother range of potential and opportunities around those things. So I think it's going to take a number of years. I don't think it'll take as long as the iPhone, for example.
Maybe
I think
3 or
sort
4 or something.
yeah, that feels like it. I think it's probably iteration 2/probably 3 of the hardware. So that's probably 6 years or something.
Like Swift 1 to Swift 5.
Yeah, I think on the hardware it will take longer, at least from where it really gets like a smaller form factor.
Yeah.
I think that's just the elephant in the room kind of, and that's gonna take probably another 10 years or so.
Yeah,
So it gets like
6
sort of
of
a glass.
Yeah, for me, the software's almost there now. Like it's very powerful. There's some things it's missing, yes, but it's there. I think
It's not
more
bad for
time
your
is more is just going to take time to take us, like as developers, to figure out what best practices are, what works, what doesn't work. So yeah, maybe 2-3 years. I think is a safe bet for where we'll start seeing some.
And by then,
mind share as to
numbers
what
will
works,
be
what doesn't.
more obvious.
Yeah, and I think back to Adrian's point, I think, strategically, if we look at other companies that are doing stuff in the similar space, there's Meta who have a high or a virtual reality / mixed reality headset with the Pro and the 3, but they've also got the Ray-Ban Stories originally, and now the Meta glasses, smart glasses. They're on a path, so they're coming at it from both ends. The Vision Pro is video pass-through, so big field of view, can process everything. Maybe they'll come out with more an Apple Watch version of glasses at the lower end that is the Vision Air or whatever, that will add functionality and utility at a lower cost of more fashionable item and things like that.
Take off the outside screen.
Yeah. But they're fundamentally different experiences, and I think that's really important. You don't go from a full video pass-through experience like the Vision Pro is to an optical see-through. Like they're just it's a step change between those two things.
But it might be ultimately like one device, which is kind of the core one. Like ideally you have most of the functionality in your glasses and you want to go immersive, then you kind of put sort of your...
You could,
just have that blocking out.
Like a...
We heard it hit the sell. Yeah, selling 2 devices that way. Come on. Can't sell you 2 devices. It's more profitable.
$6,000 a pop.
Absolutely.
Plus Apple Care.
Plus Apple.
Cool. Well, that's all we have time for, but thank you so much to the 3 amazing panelists. That was great. Round of applause, please. And thanks to everyone for your great questions. I'm sure they'll be around for a couple more questions if you have any. But that is the conclusion of the formal part of the night. Get home safely. Hope to see you next month. And remember, if you're interested in giving a talk, please let myself and Christian know. Catch you next time. Thanks, everyone. I will turn it off now.
I think the word map is much better than aircon. Remember, you have to